Um, are you there? Hi, hi.
Yeah, now I'm here. I hope
Okay.
we don't
Yeah,
disconnect again.
I know. But these technical glitches have been happening. So as I was asking
Acha,
you,
okay.
about the lockdown, you said, you've not been able to have a haircut, but you're doing something exciting that, I want to talk about. But for many of our viewers and audience joining in, there are filmmakers, there are film students who wanted me to do this live, but I just want to give a brief intro about you to others who may not be too aware of the work that you've done. You're, of course, from the Kannada film industry. Your first directorial was Life Ishtenu, and you went on to make Lucia and U-Turn, and of course, you adapted it in Tamil and Telugu with actress Samantha. And you also worked in the web series Leila, right? You directed 2 of the episodes, if I'm not mistaken, with Deepa Mehta.
And Shankar Ganesh.
And Shankar Ganesh, absolutely, starring Huma Qureshi. An exciting gamut, and of course, you're a very niche filmmaker. And what you're doing is something I believe it's very significant, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. Before I go to that, I want to ask about the Lockdown Tales podcast that you're doing. It's very interesting. Of course, it's in Kannada, but I did listen to 1 or 2, and you keep talking about the kind of films and situations. And can you just tell me why you wanted to, start that podcast? It's on YouTube, guys, by the way.
Yeah, it just, I think I was done with the whole raising funds for the daily wage workers. We had created a website, and suddenly that day I felt very, I had nothing else to do in life. So I think the whole day I just spent, and I was thinking of what to do next and all that. And all of a sudden at like 9 p.m. or something, I'd finished dinner sitting in my room right here in the same spot. And I thought maybe I should, I'd heard so much about podcasts, but I'd never kind of explored it. And I thought, let me just speak and record something that I feel like. So nothing was planned. I just opened the record feature on my phone and I just started speaking. And at about 10 minutes, I thought, okay, that's enough. And then I just posted it. And it turned out that people started kind of connecting to it. And I felt really good speaking for 10 minutes it felt like therapy. And then I just saw how people were responding, and it just made me want to share more the next day. And it went on, and 2 days ago I finished 20th episode, and which is about 200 minutes of content. The last episode I made it 20 minutes, so it's like 210 minutes of content that just came out of my life, and it's at a point where I've not even started talking about films much. It's like it's just about there, and it's been a good journey. I mean, so I just posted something today saying that it felt like I was doing a performance, because in theater we perform and then you go back feeling good about it. Yeah. So every time I posted that video, and then I wake up in the morning and I see some views and comments, and it felt like it was a performance that had happened.
Okay, and you're also an actor, which I'm not sure whether, people have seen your films or seen, and you started, in theater as well, right? You've done extensive work in theater as well. So do you think your background, in theater has kind of influenced, and how much has it influenced in the kind of films that you make? Because you make small films which are highly content driven. And I think content is king as far as your films are concerned. You take a very small idea, a very simple, it might look like a very simple idea, but it actually has so many layers to it, right? Has theater and has your previous work influenced you in your creative process, and how much has it?
I think, it's been there. So all my movies, if there are, people who've done theater or who know theater arts, they've always identified some of those elements which are part of the film in the way I've staged it, or some scenes which are not very realistic but have a little cinematic and artistic blend to it. And for example, I play a lot with reflections and mirrors. It's always been sort of a fascination of the whole man in the mirror thing. So it's been there, part of all my films in some way or another, and also For example, in Life Ishtenu, there was this whole thing of Digant looking at his dead friend in the mirror. And then in Lucia, there was the whole famous mirror scene where they exchange their worlds. So it's all very theatrical. And in fact, I had done a play called The Woman in Me, which the whole play was staged with the half the stage was mirroring the other half stage. And it was two characters speaking. So somewhere it's always fascinated me, this part, and it's come out in all my films. And in U-Turn, the character Rachna waking up on the flyover in her dream. It comes from a very theatrical sort of treatment, and it's, I guess it shows, and it's not that I try to do it deliberately, it just, instinctively comes out that way.
Okay. Small films seem to be your particular genre of filmmaking. Would I be right in saying that? Or is it, can you just, or am I wrong in saying that? I don't know. Because if you look at, right from when you started, but especially with Lucia, when you decided to go into crowdfunding and, you made the film on such a small budget, that was an eye-opener, I think, of sorts for so many people and so many filmmakers, isn't it? That you could make a brilliant film and it's not all about the money at the end of the day.
I don't know about the small and the big film, but definitely I don't think my ideas are the Bahubali types. I can never think on that zone. So I got offered some of these, what do you call them? That genre, the period genres or fantasy dramas. And I said, I don't know, it doesn't feel like I'm comfortable with. I like more contemporary, real emotions. And I like to play with character conflicts. And so for me, this larger than life has never been my comfort zone.
Okay.
And so it's not really about the budgets per se. It's the films have, in terms of content, have always been there. So even when I would say the film Nicotine, which I haven't done yet, but which has been going around for a while. When I wrote it, that was probably the one which I wrote sort of really big. Again, big in terms of not again like the big commercial canvas. It was just that there was a lot of characters, a lot happening. That's how much I could sort of push in terms of big. But I personally, I think again, theater sort of makes you write, because I started writing theater plays, and it confines you sometimes to what you can do on stage. And mine was more, I was trying to do more personal theater, more character driven. And I think this is why my films also have somewhere tried to be that, and mostly because I enjoy that more than anything.
Okay. So, so they're essentially character driven, because in each of your films, the protagonist stands out, and it's their journey and what, and it's a lot of very realistic things like U-Turn. It was just, about a U-turn on a flyover, but you were able to create such a wonderful idea about it. So a lot of your inspiration, it's from real life, it's from things you experience?
Yeah, it is something that has stayed in my mind. It is something that, like, for example, U-Turn was about a real issue on this flyover, and it had disturbed me for a long time, and it had stayed, and so I wanted to do something about that. And it's very interesting when you bring this up, because a common friend of ours, Mr. Gagan, was in fact was a little bit of sort of a push in writing U-Turn, because I had written Nicotine and I was going around for about 2 years trying to pitch Nicotine and make it happen. And Gagan was sort of telling me that, like, you should probably do something about, because after Lucia, he and I have been pretty much good friends. And so he was saying that look at things around you. And I think at the time when he said it, and it's the same time when Badal, who's an artist in Bangalore, who does a lot of these street art, and he was trying to raise awareness about this same flyover with the issue. And I said, this is something that I've also identified with every time I've gone on that flyover. So I said, let me as a filmmaker do something about it. and that was the starting point for it. Yeah.
Okay. But you've also turned producer. You produced Ondu Moteya Kade,
So
right?
I produced U-Turn, and then Ondu
Yeah.
Moteya Kate was more like an acquisition towards the end. We
Okay.
took over the film from a smaller team which had done it, and
Okay.
they just had the funds to execute it and everything. So I would say we turned more distribution on Ondu Moteya Kate than production.
But that again, the concept, right? The script was very unique. It was something, which a lot of people can easily identify with.
Yeah.
And I think that was very unique. Nobody had ever thought about writing a story around that.
No, it's all credits to the team from Mangalore, and they did a great job. So when I saw the rough cut of the film, I was really blown over that. And in fact, that was the kind of film that I've always aspired to do. Because it was when we spoke about smaller films, it was much more character and character conflict driven.
Right.
So when I saw it, I kept telling them that this is exactly the kind of film I would want to make. And now that you've already made it, let me do what I'm good at. With Lucia and U-Turn, I'd figured out what is distribution and how to market. So I said I'll do it for this film, and so we got into the project and started doing that.
But one of the things I think you've said in your earlier interviews is that you don't want to remake a film again. You'd want to look at fresh scripts only going forward. Do you think it's because it drains you creatively, or there's just too much that you need to invest?
I mean, remaking someone else's work, definitely I don't want to do it, because so remaking my own work, which was U-Turn, and in fact, so I've been held with this for Lucia as well. A lot of time went in that when I was supposed to do the Hindi version of Lucia.
Right.
So both the films, Lucia Kannada or U-Turn Kannada, they were made with very small budgets. So there was a lot of compromise that happened on the way I had written it and the way I could eventually make it because of the money constraint. So every time a bigger project came in to remake that, my idea was to see if I could actually do it the way I'd written it. So anyway, Lucia Hindi never happened because of production issues. But when U-Turn came, by then I almost had signed off. I didn't want to do it. But Samantha and I had become good friends by the time we finished Kannada. And because she had really come down from Hyderabad to Bangalore to just watch the film, and she watched it in my office, and then she and Nag Chaitanya both gave these video bites, and we started speaking. So even before the movie became a theatrical hit, she was pretty much interested in the project. So for me, when the Telugu Tamil producers came in, I said I'll do it only if Samantha is part of it, because I sort of owe it to her to and that's how that happened. Otherwise, I think now, having been through that experience and having so many more new stories to tell, I would rather spend whatever time we have in our lives doing something new.
Yeah, absolutely. But Nicotine as a project, where does it stand right now?
So, I mean, just because before COVID lockdowns happened, we had sort of figured out how to go forward. We were almost starting on pre-production, and we were putting the team together, and that's when the lockdown happened. So now let's see, once it gets lifted, where we can take it.
Okay. So I want to ask about your web series experience. How different was it, than working on films, and did you find it challenging, or was it an exciting opportunity for you?
I mean, when I signed up, it was extremely exciting because it was the kind of names that were on the project, and it's also backed by the biggest OTT sort of platform.
Netflix.
And I did not want to, in fact, U-Turn Telugu Tamil had really tired me out. I thought I should take a break, but it came in immediately. And I thought it's a great opportunity. But the project had its own interesting experiences, because that's the first time where I was not writing it. That's the first probably project which I've worked on where someone else has written it. And in fact, I wanted to do that so that I see how much of a director I am, and when I'm not the writer. And also there were two more directors who had, the series were divided into 6 episodes, where the first 2 was Deepa Mehta, the next 2 were Shankar, and the last 2 were mine. and though it all looked like interesting and doable on paper and while we planned it, but it only as it started going forward, we figured that the actors had been through two directors already, the experience of being directed by Deepa and then being directed by Shankar. And then by the time they came to me, it was so much of exhaustion, like everyone was tired, and I was trying to take it from what these two have done, and then I had to push it forward. So it was a new, interesting project. Got to see a lot of things. There were, and in terms of the budgeting, it was huge, and there's so much. So it was a good experience that way, a new experience. But did I really enjoy it as much as I enjoyed doing my own films? I would still stick to my own films because I just felt I had a lot more creative control on my own content. Here, after a point, it was about a lot of collaboration, and sometimes you had to do something even if you didn't believe in it because it's been pre-approved. So that had never happened to me before.
Yeah, it's a very corporate setup. I mean, it works very differently, obviously.
Correct.
But if you were offered a web series where you are the writer, you are the director, would you take it up?
I mean, those discussions are constantly happening. I mean, so the only difference between a film and the web series is that the web series offers you to take your characters on a longer journey. And you can and you can get into these smaller details between the characters. In the film, you're always rushing to finish the story, and web series definitely give you those moments where you can stretch those scenes out and explore more of what is happening between the characters. So it's actually a different sort of writing. In the movie, you are always constantly thinking of how to reach the end. Through plots and various turns and twists. Whereas in web series, it is more of what is happening between the characters and how much can a third character coming into this change the dynamics. So there's really the end is not what you're reaching at. You're mostly reaching at the character dynamics. So it's a different sort of writing. And for someone who's come from, for me, while we were working on Leila's script, I would constantly think of A, B, C, and it goes there. And and we had to in the interactions, like the going there is not important. What is happening between A, B, and can there be a subplot between what's happening between A, B? So that is what a web series writing should have. A writer should think of.
Okay. So speaking about upcoming filmmakers and working, many of them, there are many youngsters who now you can even shoot a film on your iPhone, or even using a digital camera. Everything has become so simplified. Technology has advanced so much. But if you were to, what would be the kind of advice you'd give to young filmmakers as far as stories are concerned? Where should they look for inspiration and what should they do creatively as far as writing a story is concerned?
I mean, I think they should just look at the example of every house has a kitchen. Every kitchen has the same ingredients. Every house has a stove, but not everyone can cook a good meal. You have the same hammer and the nail and the saw, but you can't really be a great carpenter and build a chair or a table. Eventually, it comes down to the skill. So filmmaking is not about the great handycam you have or a great DSLR you have or a expensive mobile phone that you have. It's really about what story you can tell with it. It has to be looked at as a tool eventually and nothing more than that. So sometimes there have been these amazing stories that were shot with really low-end phones or low-end handycams, but they hold you so well. For example, I would say Christopher Nolan's Following, which was his first feature and which was his lowest budget. Maybe the budget of 10 minutes of his current set. That's the budget of his entire film, and it's so good, and it's shot on a 16mm camera, and I still rate that as one of his best works compared to all his big budget works, I still can watch that film and learn so much from it. So it really comes down to what is your tool of storytelling. And without that, no matter what you have. So the youngsters should not just dive into, and also this instant gratification that is happening on social media, that is also ruined. I mean, I'm glad that I come from a generation which didn't have it. You know, so when you shoot something, the process of begging for an editing studio, the process of spending very little time there because you are charged for it, all that made us be very sure of what we are doing. But with the advanced laptops and phones today, everyone is just shooting something and then editing it and then putting it up on social media immediately. And I mean, today, like any audio visual content will get some, you know, somebody saying, hey, this is nice, this is wow, you know. Then suddenly it goes to their head and they start feeling that, hey, I'm already good, you know. So the process of learning stops right there. I think I see a lot of examples and you can't even tell them that it's not good work because they've already received so much appreciation from friends and family that they're now so blinded. And I see it as a sort of not a great way to go forward, you know. So also I come from a generation where we still shot on film. So shooting on film is a completely different sort of a discipline because you can't, like today people overshoot because it's digital, you're not spending any money on it. So you're shooting mistakes and you're not really careful about it. But here when we shot with film, you had to be very sure before you switch on the camera because every time you shoot something, you're spending money. And that really made us by instinct be very cautious of our decisions and by instinct know whether we are doing a good call on a shot or not. It was not about let's try this, let's try that, let's try this as well. You know, then it's becoming like you're not sure of your skill. And I think I keep telling in my workshops or whoever has these sessions that please, you know, always think there is a constraint. Always think and do not take this opinions that you get on social media as a measure of your skill.
I think I concur with you on that because now everybody thinks they're big directors, you know, and some of the young filmmakers also who come, they immediately want to work with a big star. Do you think that attitude should also change?
I mean, see, it's, I mean, there's nothing wrong in aspiring. It's also, there is also the journey of what you want to do with the big star. You know, sometimes, like for example, right now, if I'm given a big star, I don't know what to do with the big star because the kind of film that I'm writing or doing may just not work for him or his audience and all that. So it is, see, when you work with a star and on a commercial film, it's more like, it's more packaged. You just have to put in those ingredients and create something to serve an audience who wants those things. So I don't see, it's more like how will you manage the budget and create the most new effects and experience, larger than life experiences. I'm mostly talking about the pure art form, the traditional way of doing something, and I would say that you should be very scared. Like I was extremely scared on the first day of my shoot because my fear was that I will forget the order of saying sound, camera, action. You know, I was like, what if I mess up that and everybody on the set is gonna laugh? You know? And nobody knew that in my head I was rehearsing sound, camera, action, sound, camera, action, sound, camera. You know, so it was, I mean, you should be you should have that fear that makes you more alert. So, yeah.
But I understand what you're saying about, you know, commercial cinema, especially with the A-listers, bigger stars, whoever they may be. You know, there are certain expectations from the audience and therefore you have to kind of cater to that as well. So in that sense, you know, your creativity, your storytelling takes a backseat, doesn't it? You can't really, can you still tell the story that you want to, tell the audience? Would you be able to do that? You have to compromise a lot, isn't it?
It all again depends on how the production is mounted. If the A-lister has come and said that let's just do whatever we feel like, if that's
Right.
all they have to say actually. And
Right.
sometimes to make such a film, you don't really need to spend so much either.
Right.
Like a larger than. So I think if they just come down and they just say that let's just stick to a good idea in the script and let's just do it that way, I don't understand why it should be difficult at all, so.
Okay.
But then you spend too much and then you realize, okay, we need to get the big masses coming in, and then now let's just add these couple of things so that the masses like it, and then it all gets messed up by the end of it. Yeah.
Okay. But, given that you've worked with Samantha, who is a big star, was it easy? I mean, was that relationship easy? Like, of course, she is very talented and she doesn't come with all that, any baggage, so to say. But would you want to work with other stars as well? Or you're always driven by the character that you have in mind, and, the person has to suit the character, and therefore I don't want to force fit anything,
No, I don't have those restrictions at all. With
Okay.
Samantha, she was like this, what do I call this? Bullying elder sister that I never had. So, that was my relationship with her. And she was really like these naughty and then so it was, and in fact, but on work when we were working, it was like I was working with Shraddha, who was working first time on my film. So Samantha gave me the same experience, there was absolutely never that I have done these many films, I have worked with these many big directors, nothing. So I had a great time doing that film actually. And and not only just Samantha, there were like 4 more big names on that film. There was Adi, there was Bhumika, and so all of them were really great to be with. So now I mean, it's what happened is I'm on text basis with many of these big names in Kannada or in Tamil or in Malayalam, and we speak. And I think somewhere all the ones who are perceived as big stars, but when they talk to me, they still talk to me as as a fellow filmmaker who's done some interesting concepts. And so and I like that relationship which I have had. I mean, Fahad and I speak. And it's great to so have interact. So it's more,
Would
so
you
it's
ever
like more.
work with him? I mean, he's such a
I mean,
brilliant actor.
we both have been talking about it. But more than for me, sometimes I've come to a point where more than wanting to actually execute a project, which I've decided is sort of dependent on so many factors. So sometimes now when I just send out my scripts and say, hey, what do you think of it? And I just would like to, get their opinion. Like Fahad read 2 of my scripts and how we reacted to it. And I'm fine with that. And I would say, if you want to do something, let's take it forward. But then actors have things lined up. So that way I have friends in each of these industries. And as a writer, I'm very happy to just, get this relationship going where you just exchange your creative notes with each other.
But you were supposed to make your Hindi debut as director. Of course, it didn't pan out.
So,
but are you still looking forward to doing something in Hindi?
So the only reason it didn't is because of the amount of corrections that they want you to do in your script. You can only go like 10-15%. You will say, okay, because you do understand there's so much budget going in. But then after a point, if the soul is taken off from the whole thing, then so that's the point. I said I'd rather just come back and do it with my own money and little budgets. And I'd be like, I definitely know that for example, Lucia has been bought by the Hindi by Fox Studios, and they haven't made it yet. Because they can't get their company strategies around a film like Lucia to work. So if a film like Lucia was submitted to them at a script level, they would have never made it. Like even submitted as a film, they have not made it. So imagine, so it takes a independent sort of an effort to make a film like Lucia to happen. And
Right.
so I don't want to lose that. And
Okay.
which is why I take a call after a point that if you're meddling with the scripts too much, then I'd rather not do it. So with
Okay.
Hindi, it went to a point where an actor came in and then started making so many changes that I said I'd rather not do this, and
Okay.
came out of that contract. Yeah.
Okay. So you're more comfortable, telling the stories the way you want to say it. You want creative control as well, from what I gathered, right? But filmmakers, and touch wood, you've been able to produce your films, you've seen success after success, but have you ever been apprehensive that, oh God, this might not actually work? What if it doesn't work with the audience?
Actually, the thought doesn't come when I'm shooting.
Okay.
So when I'm shooting, at least I'm only thinking of it as the characters, the way I saw it when I was writing it, and how much of it I'm able to achieve,
Right.
of how I would like the characters to perform or how I would like the visuals to look and everything. And at the editing table, we start looking at, are we going too bizarre, or are we explaining too much? I start thinking of, is this scene trying to say the same thing too many times? So we then crunch it, and then after a point, we start thinking, have we crunched it so much that the soul of that scene is gone? So it's always these kind of discussions, and it's only when I come to a completed film which is ready to go for censor, and then I start looking at the marketing ideas of how to release it. That's when I start thinking, okay, no one's gonna watch this film. Okay, and that's when I'm like, damn, how will I now start? Why will they watch this film? So by then I'm only looking at it from a very selling point of view. How do I sell this film to an audience? And so most of the times, after I've submitted it for censor, which means that the film creatively is done, right? So after that is when I start looking at, can I just get my investment back? So because I would have taken money from someone, my company, so I'm like, I just want to, and it doesn't even include my fee. Most of the time I'm just calculating how much I've spent, and I'm like, I only want to get that much, and I'm done. That's the zone I will be in most of the time.
Okay. But, writing, directing, then editing, as a filmmaker, how much of importance does one give to each of these aspects?
So I start off as a writer, and so it comes from a thought of wanting to convey something that disturbed me or something that I want to talk about. And then for a while, as the writer puts in a concept, then this whole director starts also, because I do both. So then the director starts trying to say that, hey, on screen, I'm going to treat it like this. And then the notes keep exchanging between these two people, and they eventually becomes a sort of a script. But once I get on set, both the films, the ones which I produced, or including Life Ishtenu for that matter, which was a sort of just average budget. What happens is, so I don't stick to the script, whatever I've written. I tend to go on the set, and then I see what is available to me at that point, because not everything that we write will be given. Not everything that it is, because it's so much dependent on the budget.
Right.
So then I see, okay, so this is not available. Then I go back to my writer self and use that as to work for the scene. Instead of making it sort of a deterrent, I see how can I make it work for the scene. And so a lot of Lucia scenes, the dialogues, were written on the set. So I would go with because I would go recce and I would say, okay, this is where I would want to shoot. But when I go with my actors, everything would have changed, because we don't have money to book the space, right? So we go there, and then it's available to us the way it is available at that point. So I would many times just tell the DOP that, hey, I'm going to shoot this. And while he's setting up the lighting, 10 minutes I would sit in the corner and do the lines. And so though some of the lines have come out, I mean, I should thank whoever was working with me, the bigger power. Because today when I see some of the lines of that film, it shocks me because I don't know how I wrote them. And especially considering I was writing it when 20, 30 people were setting up lights. And those lines work so well. And so when I see it, I feel like it's not my work. I am like, okay, I don't want to take credit for it because then people will expect me to do it again. So I want to say that, someone helped me write it because there is a very interesting scene in Lucia. So the original was written as, some 100 well-dressed people sitting in a 5-star hotel. And this guy, the star, walks in with a girl and everybody is looking at him and all that. But I didn't have a 5-star hotel budget. I didn't have 100 people. I didn't have 100 well-dressed people. So I've written that as a writer, but as a director, I have none of those. And then my AD told me there's one pub available for free from night 10 till morning 4. I said, let's go check out the pub. And then we said, okay, let's fill this pub up with some 25 people at least, and then play with darkness. And then he said, even 25 people we don't have money for. Okay, so so then I said, okay, then I'm going to write the scene differently. So now, if you guys go watch the movie, there's just the two guys, the hero and the girl whom he's taken. And the scene opens with him saying that I booked the whole place for you so that we can have a private time. And suddenly the scene became bigger than it was because you're showing 100 people and a star amidst 100 people, but a star who's booked the space for himself. He's a bigger star,
Bigger star.
So so suddenly the fact that I didn't have money to get 100 people, 25 people, made me write the line which changed the dynamics of the scene. And and then when I was seeing the scene with the audience, and they would all clap at that line. There was whistles and all that. I was like shocked. I was like, wow, So that was a big lesson for me in filmmaking. Also, I've started sort of putting myself in that zone, even if I'm given a budget. I try to push myself to see what do we really need sometimes. It's very easy to write the beach or, like the ship, but then does our scene, the soul, the what the characters are doing, does it really need it? That's a question which someone has to ask constantly to make. Then you will know how to make simpler films and more effectively.
How much of time do you spend on the characterization? Because that I think is very key to your films, right? How much of time do you spend evolving? I mean, just thinking about that and, what you want the character to be like and so on and so forth. Just can you elaborate that on a little?
I don't, there is no time per se, but sometimes I've been very specific about a few things. I don't know, like maybe when I'm writing it, I would have visualized it. And sometimes that has also has an see, for example, when I'm writing, there's this interesting example of U-Turn, which was Rachana has dreamt of the dream experiences happened to her, and now she's all scared when she wakes up, and then she goes to the cop's house to to seek his help. And I guess when I wrote it, I kept remembering my first girlfriend from year 2002, and she used to wear these sweaters which were really big, like long arm, like little extra size sweaters. And I don't know, maybe I was not trying to remember her, but I think the image of a girl was that. So when I wrote it, I kept visualizing these sleeves which were coming extended, all the way till here. So when my ADs were like saying, okay, what is the costume? I said, no, I need this sweater which needs to be. So then they got the sweater which Shraddha wore, and it fit her perfectly. I said, no, but I'm not getting the sleeves down there. So it was like so specific, and then they figured. So they went and didn't buy a new one. Instead, they bought one. They got from their house an old one which is stretched out.
Stretched
And
out.
then,
Okay.
so if you watch the scene, you will see that it's really loose, one.
Yeah.
So when I went to the Telugu one, so that costume designer said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want to do everything new because I don't want to
Okay.
repeat the same things."
Right.
And she said, "Okay." And I started sending her specifics, like this is how this scene she's feeling. Da, da, da. Eventually, she said, "Dude, you've written it to that that detail that if I go following it, I'll be getting you exactly the same things. Nothing much can be changed."
Yeah.
So that was something. But I also allowed the actors to come and change a couple of things for the
Okay.
character. So instead of me enforcing the character on them, I think Shraddha brought in a lot of qualities of Rachana for the way she is, and Satish Neenasam brought in a lot of his strength. So one thing that theatre has taught me is there is a bit of there is a bit you push the actor to be the way it's written, and then there's also how much you can take from what the actor brings in. So a lot of during the rehearsal that keeps happening. So you just keep constantly watching what the actor can add to the scene rather than. So I never go demonstrate a performance. Though I act and all that, but when I direct, I always talk to the actor. I never sit in their spot and show them the shot. I never do that. So because I don't want them to imitate me. I don't want them to try to do what I'm doing. So many times they ask me, "Do you want to show me?" I said, "No, I will speak to them so much. I will say, I want you to feel like this. I want you to think like this. That's my directorial lines." And then whatever they do, I borrow it from that. I say, "Okay, now let's take that a little higher, a little lower." And maybe that's why they look so convincing.
But do you do rehearsals for every single film, and how much do you think, does it contribute to the film success, that rehearsals are important? Because you obviously don't want to waste time shooting, right? You want to make sure what you're going to get on set rather than...
I do a bit of talking to the actors mostly, like I just keep conversing, and then I get to kind of mentally have an sort of a note on their behavior and how they react to something. And sometimes it's happened that on the set I've said, "Hey, listen, that thing when we were talking, you did this, or you reacted this way, and I want you to try and get to that." So it's only with Shraddha, because she was also on board for the first time on such a huge scale, and her Kannada had to be worked on. So with her, I had a lot of rehearsals. And for me, I was also very unsure of that film, U-Turn, because it was a very vague concept. And so yeah, otherwise Lucia was mostly with Satish, with whom I'd worked so much. So I kind of knew him pretty well. And here, Samantha, we don't need to like rehearse. And since, like I told you, I work with what they bring in, we don't really have to do that many rehearsals.
Okay. Have you got other scripts in place? Have you been writing otherwise? Of course, Nicotine is on, but you must be having other scripts.
There has been like about 3 or 4 which are there, and some at concept level, some at a story level, and but usually I don't tend to write and keep it. That's only I tend to write, and I would want to make it immediately, because I would have written it with a certain excitement. And then when I keep it away, and then after a couple of months when I pick it up, I might not even like it myself. So I tend to not do that, but unfortunately the way production lineups have taken so much time, I had this extra time where I do end up writing some. But I'm seeing how I tend to disconnect after a couple of months from it. And so let's see how after lockdown what happens after
what
that.
happens. Okay, so what would you tell young upcoming filmmakers, like some things that they need to do and some things that they shouldn't be doing?
Something that they need to do is understand what is storytelling, more than the excitement. I think understanding. So what at least worked for me is I used to see movies, and then I had these original DVDs back then. I don't know if the service is available anymore. And many of these DVDs had this director's voice on the film.
Okay.
So you can play the whole film, but with the director's commentary on it. And that used to be like my biggest film school sort of a thing, because sometimes you feel you as a viewer think that the director is done this specific thing for some particular reason, and then when his commentary comes in, he says, "Oh, that just happened,"
Right.
So there's so much of learning to how to be open to something that can just happen. Sometimes a lot of those things have been part of all my films, to be. So now this is a thing which you can't be taught. This is something that you've got to observe from other person's work and learn from their experiences. So, and I think that, like I said, I think I'm becoming old, because old people tend to say this, which is, you've got to be disciplined with your art. And as a youngster, you'd be like, I was like that. I used to, when I was 24, I used to feel like, hey, I know everything about filmmaking. Now I feel like, damn, I've just been playing with my instincts, and there's so much that I don't know. So I guess that's the journey.
Okay. So, thank you so much, Pawan, for taking time out and speaking to me. Now, I see a lot of comments. People are asking about nicotine. There have been so many questions about nicotine. So, when can we, given the lockdown and what's happened?
Now it's come to a point where I feel that no matter what I do, people will be disappointed with it. Because, there's like years and years of, oh, something is there in that movie. And then even if I show them like the most amazing work, they'll be like, oh, that's all? Is that all it was? Yeah.
No, I'm sure it's going to be brilliant as always. Thank you so much for joining me. This was a very interesting conversation, and I hope you had fun too, Pawan.
Yeah, same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, guys.